Welcome back to another episode of the Digital Wrap Up. My name is Riley, and I'm the host and CEO of Harden Digital and Design. I'm happy to be joined by our creative director today, Kaylee, and we're going to be talking about the top 5 mistakes that graphic designers make. So, Kaylee, welcome back. This is now your second episode on the Digital Wrap Up and first time in the new podcast studio.
Yeah, it's a little terrifying.
Yeah, it is a whole different thing whenever you get on camera versus
Yeah.
just talking on audio. And you kind of didn't like being on just the plain audio, and when I had you on back in August. So it's a whole
Yeah, this is worse.
Yeah, but you do it more and you get used to it, and life goes on. But yeah, today we're gonna talk about top 5 graphic design mistakes. And the reason I wanted to talk about this today with Kaylee is because as social media managers, I'm obviously always going to relate everything back to social media, but as social media managers, a lot of times we get thrown into being graphic designers as well because they just think, oh, create a graphic for social media. And yeah, so like in my instance, yes, I'm a social media manager, but I have zero creativity. So I rely on tools like Canva, but whenever you go into Canva, if you're creating from scratch still, it doesn't matter how easy it is to actually do the designing. When you lack that creativity and that design sense, it's still going to look pretty bad. So there are some templates and things, but those kind of just look super stock and boring. So bringing Kaylee on today to talk about kind of the top 5 mistakes to look out for if you are somebody who's not a full graphic designer, who doesn't have the full training or didn't go to school for it, whatever it may be. So I think if you want to talk about kind of, I don't know, what bugs you the most, or why this is an important topic to you, being the graphic designer.
I'm sure. I tried to think about it from the perspective of not mistakes that other graphic designers make, but people, like regular people. I'll see it with flyers around town, or people trying to create posters or invites or social media graphics. So I went with it from that angle, and my biggest thing I think is you don't have to use all the space. Like white space is there for organization purposes. Even if you have a full page worth of stuff, maybe you should work on cutting some of it first, but there's a way to organize it that it breathes. You have to be able to know I'm starting here and moving through, and people just feel the need to fill the entire space up, and then it's overwhelming.
So that's the first thing on the list of the top 5 is...
Top 5 is you do not have to fill up every inch of space on your canvas.
And why do people think that I mean, you obviously don't know what everybody thinks, but why do you think that's a common misconception that you have to just fill the entire blank space?
I think it's been around since the beginning of time. I don't know if it's necessarily used to be when you print things. If I'm going to pay to print it, I'm going to fit as much on there as possible. I've seen it, I used to work in newspapers, so in that industry, you don't leave space.
Yeah.
I've seen it now with magazines that I work on. Sometimes they just want to add more. And they're like coming up with extra stuff just to fill space. Where I'm like, no, let's cut back. Let's leave some room. So, especially with something for social media, if you've only got, 3 seconds people are going to be looking at it, maybe, you don't want it to be full of words. The less that's on there, the better it's going to have effect. So
yeah, and you kind of want, an appealing graphic where even if you are putting text over an image or something like that, 3 to 5 words to really capture their attention. But other than that, you're not going to be nobody's going to stop and look at the image, look at the people or whatever's in the background, plus read 3 sentences worth of text.
Right.
using the graphic or the image is kind of what draws people's attention in. And then if you want to talk more about whatever, you put that in the caption or the post.
Yeah.
Leave.
We don't need the entire instruction manual of whatever you're trying to tell them on the image. There is no reason for that.
And that's, you mentioned that, and that kind of brings up like infographics. That's why infographics are so great, is because it kind of plays with the white space and kind of leads you in a direction without using a ton of text. It really breaks down the text and puts it into graphics.
Right.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned it's been around since the beginning of time. So you think when the cavemen were drawing on the cave walls that they were taking into considering the white space into consideration there? It
is a possibility.
They have a ton of white space though, so
they have space, but they also, I'm not gonna say one way or the other because I wasn't around, but
yeah. Okay, so number 1 is the white space. What's number 2 on the top 5 graphic design mistakes?
Number 2, I went with a category instead of just a concept. I'm going with typography in general as mistakes all around. Okay. I couldn't figure out just one thing. And I feel bad saying things that bother me, but that's what I noticed. So,
but it's good to get a graphic designer's perspective because this is what you do full time, and this is what, you're designing stuff every single day. So
yes,
coming from your standpoint might help out somebody who's not as creatively inclined like myself, or just doesn't think about these things when putting together a simple social media graphic.
Right. So I guess what I noticed the most is people have this desire to use a script font or a decorative font of some kind.
So like cursive or something?
Cursive, yeah. For an entire paragraph. Like, I think in people's minds that's saying, I'm emphasizing this. I want this to stand out, but all it does is make it so you can't read it. So I'm all for using script fonts or giant, bold, crazy fonts for 1 or 2 words to say, this is what's important. But even for me, like, I would never bold an entire paragraph, or I would never italicize an entire paragraph. And people do that in Word documents and emails. It's everywhere. So that's something like, it no longer emphasizes anything if the entire paragraph is like that. So
yeah, people think that, I'm just gonna bold this one sentence or these 2 sentences to make it stand out, but when it looks all the same at that point, then
it does nothing.
Yeah.
So I would stick to 1 or 2 words, or if you want to change the color of the font, don't do the whole paragraph.
Yeah, I mean, we were working on something yesterday for the website, kind of a pop-up banner on the website, and the template that we used had it was like the text was highlighted in the background, which looked like, doing that is kind of adding emphasis to 1 or 2 words, but then the highlighted text was on 2 different lines, so it kind of just like ruined the whole aesthetic of and the point of highlighting a word, because it just looked pretty crappy.
Right. And we do things for different clients where, like, for a realtor that sold a house, if they want to use a script font to say, like, sold, okay, that's 1 word, that's the emphasis, I'm all for that. Mm-hmm. But then I've had people want wedding invitations where, like, entire Bible verses are in cursive, and then you can't read it. So that's the script, and the emphasis is one, and then using too many fonts is maybe one of my biggest problems.
I think she's going to say that for every point.
I know. It was really hard for me to pick 5 things, okay? So this is why this is a whole category. We'll get posters that people around town even just create, and there's 5 different fonts on there, because for each, like, for the food for the event is 1 font, and then the time for the event is a different font, and it just looks a hot mess. And, like, there's no rule that says you can't do that, but there should be. And I don't know if people know that font families exist.
Can you explain what those are?
Absolutely. Font families is the bold, the thin, the regular, the extra bold, the black, all the different varieties of one font. So you're still getting different emphasis and different effects, but you're not using different fonts. So it still looks clean. A lot of businesses choose one font for their entire company. Like, you are only allowed to use this font for print, digital, any kind of media. And then they just use the font families. And a lot of them come in like thin italic, or they'll come in bold italic. So you still have the different options, but you're not switching fonts all the time. Or some people will do one font family for headlines and one font family for body copy.
Yeah.
So you're still only using two fonts, but you have a variety. So,
and I think that can be difficult. I've mentioned Canva here a few minutes ago. That can be difficult on Canva because there isn't the font family selections on Canva. So I guess that's one thing when you're looking at the differences between using something like Canva and using, Adobe Illustrator, InDesign, that type of thing. Canva doesn't necessarily have the extended font families available. They have the bold and the italicized and things like that, but it can just be different than the actual font family, and then people will just end up going and selecting an entire different font that's a script font and then it's not there. Actually the italicized of the same type of font, and then that's when you get your 3 different fonts deep already, and you're like, oh, what's one more? So that is kind of one of the big glaring differences between Canva and Adobe. And now Adobe makes an app that you can use on your phone too, that you can also do the font families with as well. So definitely, if you are a graphic designer, we're not sponsored by Adobe or anything by that means, but if you're a graphic designer, but if you're a social media manager, obviously Canva is great. It's easy. We default to it a lot, both Hannah and I, but if you're looking to get more professional and more in-depth with things, Adobe, especially the app, is really easy to use as well. I think once Canva came out, they kind of made, I think it's Adobe Spark. Well, it used to be Adobe Spark. Now it's like Adobe Express or something like that on the phone. Really simplified their programs for you. So, all right. Is there a 2C, 2D, or did you cover them all?
It kind of all ran together. The other thing, real quick on font families, I suppose is in that category, is there's a difference between when you have a font and you just click that little bold button. That's different than a font that's specifically bold in the family. So sometimes if you just hit bold or italicize and the font isn't meant to do that, it just like puts a little tiny stroke around it, and then you can't read it. So a lot of times if there is no bold font style in that family, I would avoid using it because it's going to look crazy.
Yeah.
We can call that good on typography.
Okay. So before we move on to mistake number 3, I do want to just mention that if you haven't listened to or watched the podcast yet on YouTube, and you're listening right now on Apple or Spotify or whatever platform you're using, we are on YouTube now, youtube.com/@HardenDigital, and you can find all this episode and the previous 2 that we've posted on YouTube now. So if you want to see Kaylee lose her mind about all these graphic design mistakes, she's visually frustrated at some of these, then you can go watch it on YouTube. Again, that's youtube.com/@HardenDigital, and you can find this episode, the past 2, and all the future episodes, so be sure to subscribe. So yeah, moving right along to mistake number 3.
Mistake number 3, I went with editing of photos because there's 2 complete extremes of people who I don't know if under edit is a word, but like don't think about what is actually in the background or even what their subject is doing before they take a photo and then they post it or they send it in for a magazine or whatever. And then I see it a lot in real estate photos. I know that's not necessarily our area of expertise, but when you take a photo and then there's trash in the background, or you're taking a photo of the person here, but then somebody back there is doing something inappropriate, and then it gets posted because you're not really thinking about it. So that's one side of it, and then over editing photos is a huge deal. Not only with, I mean, the magazine industry forever has been criticized for photoshopping things, but even just adding the millions of filters that are available for photo editing apps to your photo, like you can, when it gets to the point you can tell it's fake, or the clouds are the wrong color, or this car looks magically shinier than it's supposed to, or especially when you're trying to advertise something, there's a difference between correct editing and going just way overboard. So I would try and keep it as true to the original as possible, but also think about it ahead of time to make sure that what you're doing is purposeful.
Yeah, and I think that's that last point is the big part there of planning ahead and having that attention to detail. So when you're taking the picture, this is, not necessarily graphic design related, but it does relate. Like if you're taking a picture and sending it off to a magazine designer or something like that, or if you're just taking a picture and posting it on social media, you really have to be in that mindset of, okay, yeah, here's this, you're taking a picture of a group of people at an event, but what's going on in the background? Or it's really, you have to have that mindset of, it's not just what you're focusing on, it's everything around it. Because especially if you're at a live event or something, you get one shot at it and then
that's it.
Yeah. And then you might scramble and be like, oh crap, I do have to edit this like crazy, or crop things out, or try and blur things, make the background look all goofy and all that stuff. So I think just overall with this point is plan ahead as much as possible, pay attention to the small details, and think about what the image is going to be used for, whether it's social media graphic or you're sending it off to a magazine. Because I can imagine, especially like in your situation, the magazines you design, you're not out there taking all the photos. So you're relying on people to send you stuff. And if they send you a photo, I think with a recent magazine you designed that the Santa Claus picture Santa and his wife for this holiday magazine, there was things on the mantle of the fireplace and they wanted this, but...
And that's all I could see.
Yeah.
When I'm looking, like Santa and Mrs. Claus, they do it all the time. They've been portraying these characters for years, and all I could see was the crap on the mantle behind them. And
then they were just
they asked me to just
crop it out.
Take it out. Photoshop it out. Like, I understand that you think I have those skills, which I worked it out and it was fine, but it would have been infinitely easier had somebody just thought ahead, like maybe we should move that, or don't sit right in front of something where the background is crazy, or...
And this was the cover photo of a magazine.
Yes, so. And a lot of times I understand completely that not everybody's a photographer. Like
just
sometimes...
Like not everybody's a graphic designer.
Right, not everybody has had years to practice the composition of photos, and that's fair. And so this is just for this is what I would say is for quick photography for regular people.
Mm-hmm.
And
maybe we'll have an episode about that. Top 5 photography mistakes for beginners.
We could go on and on about it, but I guess the whole purpose, like you said, is just please think about it, and especially before submitting something to someone else, or I guess I'm going to throw this out there too, to know that if you take a picture on your phone and then you send it somewhere that's supposed to get blown up, that photo is going to get distorted or not always print well, so something else to think about.
Unless you have a good iPhone camera. So
yes.
I think that she was talking specifically to the Samsung and Google Pixel users, which she is. But
I am.
No, just kidding. I mean, cameras on phones are getting a lot better, but it is still something that can't compare to a full good camera if you're trying to get something blown up. So.
And for the record, if I'm taking a photo that somebody posted on Facebook and trying to print it, it's already been shrunk to fit on Facebook, so it's not going to blow up. I don't know if people...
Oh, like downloading a photo off of
Facebook and then trying to get that printed, or
used
taking it from social
sometimes.
media. Yeah, they're small images. I don't know if people know that.
Yeah, they reduce the images when they get posted to the social media platforms because they're trying to limit the amount of space that's used on their servers. So yeah, people be like, oh, well, we have these photos on Facebook. Can you just use them on the website for a banner image? And it's like, no, because
can't.
Once it's blown up and is that big banner across the top of the page, it becomes super
awful.
blurry, and it's just not a full-size image anymore. So
I get that a lot for brochures or posters. They're like, well, the pictures are on Facebook. Like, that's great, but I cannot use those.
Yeah, I mean, in that instance, the original photo that is on your phone is
fine.
100% better than pulling it off of Facebook.
Yeah.
So
that I should put that on there. I didn't even think of that until right now. So
yeah.
Sorry, that's like 3.5.
Yeah. So moving on to, what are we at? 4 now?
We're on 4.
Yeah.
4. I don't even know if this is a real thing, but color choices are stressful for me.
Mm-hmm.
On websites, on any kind of media. With people using either way too many colors, or the contrast of colors is too light that you can't even tell what's going on, or people using red text on black, or red text in general. I also want to take it the other way of, just because your school colors are black and yellow doesn't necessarily mean you have to use black and yellow on every single thing ever. Or just because it's Christmas doesn't mean the magazine cover has to be puked on with red and green. That one gets me almost every year. Like, we can use other colors. They'll still know it's Christmas.
Especially if the image or something portrays Christmas.
Yes.
If there's a Christmas tree on the cover or Santa on the cover,
And
obviously it's Christmas.
Holiday issue.
Yeah.
Yes, that one stresses me out. But the color choice of, a lot of times, choosing one color and then going with black and white with it is your best bet. Like, honestly, I would rather you have a colored background and use white text than a colored background and then use yellow text just for fun. Or, once again, it goes back to emphasizing things. You're not doing what you think you're doing by using 7 different colors. All it's doing is making it look hectic, and
it's distracting people from what you really want the point to be.
Yes, especially if your main point of whatever your social media graphic is or whatever is giant, bold, looks great, and then you have this random colorful words down here. That's all my eye is going to go to. So it's keeping it simple, using the least amount of colors, or using shades and tints of the same color so that you get a variety, but it's not overwhelming.
So when we're talking about color, and then you mentioned typography as the number 2 mistake, what do you think draws the people's attention more? The size of the font or colors on the graphic?
I think it depends. I think whichever one is the most wrong is what's going to draw the eye, unfortunately. So I think I would assume that people agree with me that you're going to point out the thing that looks off before you even read whatever it's supposed to be telling you. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how to answer that question.
I think that makes sense, that people are so quick to point out mistakes or typos in posts or things like that, that if there's something that's just blaringly ugly
Yeah.
on a graphic, then yeah, people are their eyes are gonna be drawn to that first.
Yeah.
So.
And the sizing of the font, I didn't even talk about in typography.
Well,
But
2-point D.
We work on websites all the time. Sorry, I'm backtracking. We work on websites all the time where we'll go to check out what they currently have, and on one page, the font is normal sized, it's organized well, and then you go to the other page and it's like they didn't have enough text, so they just made it all bigger. So please don't do that.
Yeah.
So I got off track again. I'm sorry.
It's all right. So back to colors. Is there anything else?
No, really, I would just say keep it simple. One, it's honestly almost the same as photos of think ahead. It doesn't need to be rainbow colored to get your point across. So.
And this kind of ties into point number 5, but maybe it's something that when you're thinking about what colors to use or branded colors for your organization, coming up with a color palette that matches so that it's not just, okay, blue, 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 or black and yellow, like you mentioned, or something like that, where it has a different mix of colors that are kind of the brand colors that then you can incorporate different colors for different graphics or different designs, whatever it may be. Like you'll get into this, I think branding is point 5, but we just worked on the Boys and Girls Club of Tipton County's website, and it's more of the Nationals that have a full branded color palette that we were able to work from. I think I posted an image of the studio setup last week, and people pointed out the hex codes that were on my laptop, and those were the hex codes from the Boys and Girls Club's website, and they had a blue, they had a darker blue, they had a gray, and then they had a green, I think, mixed in there too.
That's what we used. They had a whole list of colors you can use, but then they specifically put in there this blue, their main blue needs to be used like 65% of the time, or some percentage. I don't really remember.
We didn't measure that.
We didn't, but
it's heavy, that color.
I've seen it. I do things for IU as well where they have rules on you can use this main color and 1 or 2 secondary colors off their palette. Like keeping it so that you're not just going color crazy. So a lot of bigger organizations do have rules for that. So
yeah, and that's something, we mainly stick to blue and white for the stuff that we do, but if you're one of those people that's like, oh, I just don't use blue over and over and over on every single thing, then just develop a full palette that you can kind of mix in and switch it up from one post to another if you want to, or one graphic to another. So that's kind of a segue into the 5th and final point.
Yep. The last one was inconsistency in branding. And what I was thinking when I was going with that was, if one day your social media post is completely branded this way, makes sense, has these colors, has these fonts, and then your next post 2 days later looks completely different because you picked a different Canva template or for whatever reason, then how in the heck are people going to know that was yours? Like, I understand if you don't want it to look exactly the same every time, but there has to be some kind of consistency. So
I think
I don't even know how to categorize that.
Like points 1 through 4 kind of all wrap into the overall point 5 of branding, is that you want to be consistent. You really want to be, the typography is consistent, the colors are consistent, the white space even plays into branding, because if you're just kind of known for having a lot of white space, or like, I guess you can be known for the bad instances of having 0 white space too, but it's kind of all wraps into this. You want to have that consistent brand, from logos in post or watermarks in post. I know we're kind of gearing specifically towards social media, but that's on infographics, and that can be on the marketing materials if you're sending out what are they called? Magnet calendars that you put on the your fridge at home if you're sending those out to clients or whatever it may be, that you're designing something. Having that consistency is very important.
Yeah. And it's still, once again, being purposeful in what you're choosing to do. I don't know how to emphasize that more.
Put it in
we
bold.
have we have entire like sections of our company, or I don't know what to call it, areas of our company specific to branding, because it's so important that everything you do leads back to who you are as a company. Even, I don't know a better word right now besides vibe, but even the vibe of your design has to match. If one day it's all soft and light and has more pastel colors, and then the next day you've got this font that's just screaming at you and everything is orange, like that's inconsistent. So the tone, that's what I'm going for, not vibe. The tone of your brand has to be decided upon. So that's why a lot of times when we get clients who are just starting a business, it's better to talk about that from the get-go and pick your branding before you start, so you're not, years in and deciding, none of this stuff we're doing actually makes any sense for our business,
or you just have no plan at all, and then you're kind of just, oh, let's slap a logo on here, or let's use this color because it looks cool and I think it's awesome. Like, planning all this ahead is so important from an individual graphic or individual marketing piece to the full scale everything we do at the business.
Yeah.
You can get super specific to a specific post, or just look at it from the overhead view of everything that we're doing, from what we're hanging on the walls in the office and things like that. When you break it down, the more you can plan that out from the beginning and think about those different things when you are starting a business.
Yeah. Well, even we had a client in here where she wanted a logo for her Instagram book page. And that's not necessarily a business. She's not really making any money. All she's doing is reading and posting about which books she's got. But she wanted a logo to watermark her images. And I went through what she'd already had and kind of got the feel of how her Instagram feed was. And that was not even necessarily business related, but it was still branding. So that, well, she actually had a problem with people stealing her photos, so that's what she was going for originally. But just thinking about consistency in your Instagram photos.
Yeah.
Like, it just, I can't even explain how all-encompassing branding is. If my Instagram is a whole mess, but I'm aware of it, so it's consistent in the fact that it's inconsistent.
Yeah.
But for businesses, if all of your photos are like black and white, or all of your photos have really strong contrast, that's something you have to think about. So
yeah, there was a time, and it's still kind of around today, but your profile grid on Instagram, businesses got super insane about every single photo has to be this, or it's like there's even you post 3 photos in a row that are all the same type of post, so then each line of your profile grid is the exact same. Or there's so many different things out there. That's, for me, that's going hardcore. Yeah, that's going above and beyond, but people do it, and kudos to them because it does look cool, but that's a step above. Maybe focus on the basics before you get to that point. But yeah, there's so many different things that you have to consider. It's not just hop on Canva, create a post, and run with it.
Yeah, and then that is kind of, I think, what gets people in trouble is there are so many templates. So it's easy to be like, well, this one looks good. This one looks great for what I'm going for today. And then tomorrow, whatever I'm posting makes more sense with this. which I like how Canva or whatever Adobe apps you can find have the option to put your brand information in there. Mm-hmm. You can set your color palette. You can add your different logos. So they're trying to make it easy for you. They're trying. I mean, it's still stuff you have to think about ahead of time. So.
Yeah, I mean, graphic designers, I think, are very detail-oriented. And if you don't have that, then maybe hire somebody. Because there is a lot more that goes into it than just slapping a post together on Canva or anything like that. And when we're talking about branding, Kaylee mentioned that, it is part of what we do here at Harden Digital and Design is we offer a full branding package, whether you're a new business that's from the very beginnings, like, hey, we need a logo and we're starting this business, logo, color palette. What else do you do with kind of the...
I will go through, honestly, everything we talked about today. Font choices and I don't know how to explain it better than saying I help you figure out what the rules are going to be for your media. So a lot of the brand guides that I have.
You put together a full brand guideline for them.
And it'll be rules on
it's a document. It's not just an email.
Booklet, yeah.
Yeah.
Of you cannot use photos and then crop them out. Or you have to, even with the Boys and Girls Club, they had rules on what types of photos you could use. They couldn't be straightforward posed planned photos. It was all supposed to be, action shots or candids. So even that was in their brand guide of things to do and things not to do. They even had as far as paragraphs pre-written for different websites. And I get that they're a little bit of a large scale and they have different...
Yeah, this is coming from the national.
Yeah, that's from the national for the different local websites or local... If they wanted to do posters, they had it all planned out ahead of time. So it was really easy for us to go in and just have pre-written text. So we can do that for people. I'm not the world's greatest writer. This is what Riley does. But there's guidelines. That's better.
Yeah.
Better.
I mean, coming up with a mission statement or things like that even. But I mean, for the branding side of things, the logo will give you different logo variations and will give you a social media icon, because a lot of times if you have text in your logo, you're not going to be using that. You can see this, wrong hand, this behind me for our social media icon or profile images. We usually just use this icon of the chat bubble with the HD inside of it, because if we tried to use that full thing behind me, you couldn't read the text.
Small. Yeah.
So we'll give you an icon specifically for social media profiles, and then we'll give you a not every logo or not every company is going to want this or need this, but a horizontal logo like this one where everything's stretched out. But then we also have a vertical one. I don't have anything here to show you if you're watching the YouTube, but we have a vertical one where the Harden Digital and Design is stacked underneath the chat bubble. So we'll give you all these different things and specify in this brand guideline booklet of this is when to use this type of thing. This is when to use this type of thing. These are the fonts you should be using because these are in your logo, and use them here, here, and here. Or, I mean, obviously the captions of social media posts, you can't change the font of those, but if you're creating graphics and putting text in the graphics, use this font. If you want a color palette beyond just the primary and secondary color, we can put that in the branding guideline too. So we can really, everything we've talked about here today, we can put together in one package for you. And it's great, especially for new businesses starting out who haven't done this yet. But at the same time, if you're listening to this and be like, well, crap, we've never done any of this for our business, and our stuff is kind of just all over the place, we can help you with a rebrand as well. It's essentially the same thing, just kind of, you're not late to the game, but it's,
I
you
don't think
need
people
to.
have always thought about this.
No, they
like
haven't.
even before social media, if you didn't do a lot of printing, like if your business just existed and you ran your day-to-day stuff and you didn't necessarily get anything printed, you never would have thought of that. Because for the most part, like I can stick a black logo on a shirt and my people can go to work in that shirt, and that's all I ever needed to do.
Yeah.
So until you started something where you maybe needed social media or needed to start advertising, I don't know if everybody even thought about the whole grand scheme. So
Yeah, and it's especially harder. We work with a lot of small businesses. It's a lot harder for small businesses because they don't have somebody full time on staff in house to do that. So, that's kind of what we do on both the social media, website, and graphic design side of things. Is we be that resource for you. So it's something. If you're listening to this, and whether you're a business owner or you work for a business and the branding is awful and you know it, and you've seen some of the mistakes that we've highlighted today happen at your business, reach out to us and we'd be happy to sit down and talk with you about it and figure out a plan of, okay, do we need to do a full rebrand, or maybe we just need to put together some brand guidelines because your logo is great, but you never took the step beyond the logo and what you do with the colors and the fonts and things like that.
Yeah.
So if you're in that situation, feel free to reach out to us. Send me an email or Kaylee. It's Riley@hardendigital.com or Kaylee@hardendigital.com. Reach out to us. Visit our website, hardendigital.com. I'll put the link to our graphic design services in the show notes, both on YouTube and on the podcast, just the audio version as well. So be sure to check out everything that we can kind of do there. We can put it all in one package, or we can do an individual thing, piece one or two things together, whatever you need for your graphic design needs. Kaylee can do it for you. I won't get involved in that because I know that's my limitations. So, is there anything, those were the top 5 things. Is there anything else that you want to wrap up with on the digital wrap up?
I don't know. That was a lot more than 5 things. I'm sorry.
But that's all right.
It was like 17, but no, I don't think I have anything else. I want people to know that we are a resource, that you don't... I do a lot of things around town, just like, hey, can you make us this poster for this event? It's like a one-time thing, but we had one, even for, we might make ourselves look a little small town here, but in Tipton here where we're located, there's a tractor pull every year. And I made a social media graphic for them and it blew up. Like, I don't think people think about the impact that small choices having a designer do when that may not be in your wheelhouse makes a huge difference. So
yeah,
if you're struggling, or if you weren't aware that you might be struggling with it, just see what we can do.
Yeah, we'd be happy to put together a package where we design 3 social media posts or graphics a month, or just a handful of graphics leading up to an event that you're having or something like that. Or you need posters, or like there's so many, anything that needs designed, whether it's a one-off thing, it's 3 or 4 times a year, or 3 or 4 times leading up to an event that you're having, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be hire us on as a retainer to do everything for every single month of the year. Like, it doesn't have to be that. Yeah, that'd be great. If you have that much that needs designed, sweet. We'd love to help you there. But the one-off things can go a long way to making your brand and your business stand out too, and we'd be happy to help there. So, well, I think that'll do it for this week's episode of the Digital Wrap Up. Like I said, I'll throw in some links to all the different graphic design stuff that we do here at Harden Digital and Design. 45 minutes in, I'm struggling now. So I'll put all that information in the show notes. And it's tomorrow is December, so that's exciting. We're almost to the end of the year. So if you are looking for just another plug, if you are looking for some, if you're wanting to kind of get the new year started right in 2023, now's the time to reach out so we can spend this next month putting everything together, planning, just even having the consultation can take time so we can put together a detailed plan for how we can help you in 2023. So be sure to reach out if you need help. And until next time, next week, hope you all have a great week and stay warm. It just got cold overnight here, so really dreading that. But I will see you next week on the Digital Wrap Up.